At the center of the Norse cosmos stands a tree, Yggdrasil, vast, living, and wounded. Vast enough to hold gods, giants, and men within its living roots and endless branches. Its crown touches the heavens. Its roots drink from the wells of death and memory. In this episode, we begin our climb up the living cosmos, through myth, through matter, through meaning itself, exploring the multifaceted metaphor of the world tree. And along the way, discovering how existence branches and breathes just as the tree. From neurons to rivers, from myth to meaning, we explore the shape of being and what it reveals about the living nature of the cosmos. Perhaps the most profound realization we have throughout the conversation is that our ancestors saw the universe not as a machine, but as something alive. And that simple truth still shapes how we can find our place within it, even today. We hope you enjoy the episode.
I was thinking that we could just start with a poem, part of one. We're not going to read the whole thing. So, I'm not going to go through the list of steeds. I'm going to start with, on these steeds the gods shall go, when dooms to give each day they ride, to the ash tree Yggdrasil. 3 routes there are that 3 ways run, neath the ash tree Yggdrasil. Neath the first lives hell, neath the second the frost giants, neath the last are the lands of men. Ratatosk is the squirrel who there shall run on the ash tree Yggdrasil. From above the words of the eagle he bears and tells him to Nidhogg beneath. 4 hearts there are that the highest twigs nibble with necks bent back, Dian and Dvalin, Dunair and Durathror. More serpents there are beneath the ash than an unwise ape would think. Goin and Moin, Graf Vitner's sons, Grabach and Graf Voluth, Ofnir and Svafnir, shall ever, methinks, gnaw at the twigs of the tree. Yggdrasil's ash great evil suffers, far more than men do know. The heart bites its top, its trunk is rotting, and Nidhogg gnaws beneath. Hrist and Mist the horn, bring the horn at my will, Skeguld and Skogul, when dooms to Hild and Thuth, Lok and Herfjotur, Gol and Geronol, Rongrith, Rothgrith, and Regenleif, beer to the warriors bring. And I think we have gone to the end of the part about the tree. So, what do we have here? We have in the middle of a long list of names of things, a description of a tree that is apparently important.
And in bad shape.
And it's got some issues. It's being assailed by many things. Other things live in it. It seems to be a not particularly well cared for tree, or maybe that's not fair. It's being cared for, but it's also got some opposition.
So, what does it mean, first off, to have a tree as an image of the cosmos? My thought is that one difference that you could potentially draw out of this is that the universe is an organism, right? We have an image of a living thing that's not doing great, a living thing that's assailed, as you said, by different forces that are kind of eating away at it, but a living thing nonetheless.
Yep. I think we should back up a sec, though. We say a living thing that is an image of the cosmos. Let's talk a bit about what shape this cosmos is, what it looks like. And then we can thank you for that. I certainly, all right. Okay, so it is a tree. I'm writing that one down. Okay. All right. But when we say it's the cosmos, what's in it and where are we in it? I think that's where we should start.
Sure. What's in it would, my first thought is, well, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, what's described as being in it here, though, I guess is
specific animals.
Mhm.
There's deer, there's snakes, there's an eagle and a hawk, there's a squirrel.
but even before we get to them, we get to roots, 3 of them, and what lives underneath them, right?
Right.
So we have 3 roots. We have this tree that must be pretty dang big because it's 3 roots. Neath the first lives hell, neath the second, the frost giants, and neath the last are the lands of men. So this tells us, we've got 3 roots that are what? Sort of the somehow or another, these 3 roots, each of them goes to a place where a certain class of individuals exist, right? The frost giants, well, that's a bunch of individuals. And do we have the text? I suppose we don't, because I didn't bring the Norse text with me.
No.
I'm wondering what the word is there for frost giants, if it's specifically frost giants or if this is a poetic decision by the translator.
Find it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, while I'm working.
So to continue what I'm saying, though, so we've got frost giants, which are sort of not particularly elevated, intelligent, non-human beings, right? Who are taken by some to be personifications of these sort of raw forces of nature. But in any case, different from humans and very powerful and not always our friends, maybe usually not. Neath the last are the lands of men. So we get a root. All of us humans, we get a root. Frost giants get a root. And the other one, it says, neath the first lives hell. I assume what is meant is the ruler of the land of hell and not lives the land of hell. But if she lives there, hell is there too, since that's where she lives. Having conveniently taken up an abode in a place that has the same name as she does. Clever. Yes. That way, if someone's writing her address on an envelope, they can, they don't get confused. So we have the dead, right? And their guardian, ruler, whatever we want to call hell. We have the frost giants. It is. So that is frost giants, or right, rime, right, which is icy stuff. So frost giants works. Thursar are, of course, a specific type of specifically nasty giant is a Thurs, right?
So, man, we could do a whole episode on that. I think that some of the etymologies that I've seen say that, calling all of these things giants is maybe not, it draws attention to their size rather than their nature.
Mm-hmm.
And Thors seems to be cognate to words for things like demon.
Mm-hmm.
The same way that Jotun really means something like devourer.
Yep.
But yes, Hrimthorsar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so powerful, mean, demonic things, men, and the dead. These 3 get a root. This is what's at the bottom, then, we have to think of this tree. So the cosmos, if we're thinking of it horizontally, at the bottom or near the bottom are these, right?
Yes.
Now, I have often had a different thought that we're sort of in the middle, and I think that also fits with certain things, right? And that's a very sort of typical I suppose, Indo-European view, and probably not just, where you have sort of a large threefold divide in the cosmos. You have, sky, underworld, world, right? And the middle is the world where we live. When we die, we end up underground. And there's gods up in the sky being all shiny and stuff.
It's right there in the name, Midgard.
Right.
Yard.
Now, on the other hand, we could think, if we do actually think that Midgard is sort of at the bottom of the tree, it could still be in the middle in a different sense, right? It could be in the middle in terms of having things surrounding it on sort of a horizontal axis. But I do think that ultimately, I don't think that I don't know. The giants and man may both be on sort of the same axis, but I don't think that hell is. But to get back to the point, in some sense, the roots of this thing, what this thing grows out of, right? Because that's what trees grow out of, are their roots, are the lands of the dead, the frost giants, and the living, we must assume, men. So we've got a tree, which is, we think, the cosmos, and at its base in some way are these things. All right, so that puts us right here, right? Where we are now is where we have three sort of named, so just in one stanza, we have three sort of named areas, we might say, or areas where at least we know the names of their inhabitants. They're at least the bottom part of the tree. Roots come out of these three areas.
Can I pose a thought experiment?
Please.
So this is kind of kitschy almost in a sense, but like if we were to just look at this purely spatially,
yeah,
look at how close a neuron looks to a tree.
Yeah, sure.
And
don't they even call the things that come out of them dendrites?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And so when we're talking about cosmology, I think we're talking about being throughout scale kind of thing, like
similarity, right? It's a concept.
And so like this is symbolic, but it's also literal in a sense, and it does describe the very nature of reality. So, that as kind of a jumping off point, like, and tying back to where we were at the bottom, using that as kind of the framework, how does that relate to these kind of roots going to these various areas that we just described?
So if I'm understanding your point, you're saying that just sort of throughout various scales throughout existence, we see tree-like forms.
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
Yeah, and we obviously didn't know that because we didn't know what a neuron looked like, but we chose the tree as a central point for a reason because it called to us, and then later to kind of find out that it's not only a neuron, but then neurons resemble actual cosmos, like actual galaxies.
They would have seen other tree-like things at different scales, though, right? They certainly saw veins, and arteries and stuff, both by seeing people's translucent skin, which many people have, especially wiry, hardworking people who don't overeat or have high fructose corn sugar in their diet. You can often see their veins. And also, they fought with edgy things, so they probably also saw them in other ways, right?
Yeah.
When butchering animals, they would have seen all kinds of things inside of animals that are very tree-like.
Yeah.
Lymphatic systems, all the fun stuff. Right? And, corals probably pop up as being very tree-like.
It's of water running down a flat surface.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Or even, if you're imagining what rivers look like, and certainly they would have navigated quite a few rivers, you see that rivers divide off and are very tree-like, right?
Yeah.
So, man, I almost think we could use that as a jumping off point. The fact that trees and tree-like structures are not only are both central to the Germanic understanding of the cosmos and a structure that shows up literally everywhere.
Yeah, we kind of have a sacred geometry, and I think my sense is that it points us to kind of the why of, or the specialness of this as a symbol, why we might revere it as a symbol, and what it does for us and what reflected in how it shows up throughout nature.
Right. And I think, the more than just saying, the Old Norse thought the cosmos shaped like a tree, and we can see galaxies that are shaped like trees, and neurons are shaped like trees. There's trees in us, man. It's trees all the way down.
Always has been.
Which is fascinating. But I think also, there you have ways of diving into the meaning of that.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it trees all the way down?
Mhm.
Like, in linguistics or in genealogy, everything has a tree-like shape, right? You have convergences and divergences.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seems to be a way that not to get too metaphysical, but it seems to be a way that being organizes itself.
Yeah, through this tree-like structure, and certainly family trees too. I mean, if you look at that, it's several splitting offs and comings together. Yeah.
So yeah, I think that for a lot of reasons, the idea of the tree is the basic symbol for existence. There's a lot of inputs to that. I think that we, as modern people, have a tendency to overprivilege our access to data and think that this makes us more intelligent. People in the ancient world didn't have access to as much data, but I think that also meant that they did more with what they had. And thus they were able to interpret things more deeply, right? Where we have a breadth of information, they had a depth of information. And I think that, you can certainly arrive at the underlying treeness of existence through that kind of, through meditation, through observation of the world around you. And with modern telescopes and modern microscopes, being able to see that, nope, this holds true. That's just a justification.
Yeah, because what is treeness? I mean, it is life. It is flow and transfer of, essential nutrients, or whatever you want to call it. It's directional. And I think that kind of is, in a sense, like an essence of an encapsulation of life in general. And I think that we can kind of see it throughout nature and just kind of be like, hey, that's life. That's expressing itself.
So we have this image of a tree that is drawing from its roots from these three worlds,
Right.
as we tend to call them. It's supporting a structure and putting leaves that are then feeding something else. These hearts, these deer, right? So, and then I know that it's either in the Gylfaginning or it's somewhere else in the Grimnismal, where they're talking about the dew falling from the antlers of the deer forming these rivers on Earth.
This is earlier in the Grimnismal.
Is it earlier?
Yeah, I'll find it real quick. Hadron the goat on the hall that stands. Sorry, that was a wrong translation. Hadron is the goat who stands by Harefather's hall, and the branches of Larath she bites. The pitcher she fills with the fair clear mead, ne'er fails the foaming drink. Eikthrnir is the hart who stands by Harefather's hall, and the branches of Larath he bites. From his horns a stream into Hvergelmir drops, thence all the rivers run, and then they do all those rivers, and then we got to where we were earlier.
So it's an image of kind of movement in a cycle. And you have an image of kind of simultaneous decay and renewal.
Mm-hmm.
So what does this tell us about how ancient heathens saw it being? One, it's not static. It behaves like a living thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of behaves like an entire ecosystem of living things.
Right. And I think that's important. It's very organic.
Mhm.
Now let's think of alternate sort of ideas, right? If you read like Milton or something, the world is sort of a big static sphere with, heaven above, and there's a chain that holds the world in the middle and hell's underneath, right? And it's architectural more than organic.
Mm.
It's you imagine that the fundamental thing there is unmoving stone. Oh, and there's a chain too, which I suppose is metal, but whatever. And it's not as if it's not a universe that grows and lives and has its own being in a way.
All that you mentioned is very inorganic.
Yeah,
Stone,
it's just
metal.
dead.
Yeah, and it's what is the word I want to use? Like synthetic, or like it's a creation of the mind rather than a reflection of being.
Right. And
You also have like the later deist image of God as the divine clockmaker,
right.
who sets something going and flips the on switch or winds it up with a key or whatever, and then just lets it run. But again, it's a construct of a particular mind, rather than
a mind of wheels and gears.
a mind of wheels and gears.
Yeah.
Rather than something that grows from itself. This is all right. Now we're touching on something that I think is a really important point. If we're trying to figure out what the difference is between our worldview and an Abrahamic or other sorts of worldviews. And we touched on this briefly when we were talking about the Vodospa, when we were talking about the gods as being also subject to weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have the gods existing in a universe that's self-existing, right? They are part of it. They didn't create it. They shaped it.
Mm-hmm.
They gave it the shape that it has now.
But the raw material for it already existed. And even what they had to shape, they had to take a living thing that they had not created and kill it and shape the world out of it. And then living things arose on that. Right. And that seems very important. What seems fundamental here is just in various ways the idea of life. The universe, in a sense, is a living thing. The shape of that universe. Now, admittedly, we're kind of, pulling in the creation story with Ymir. It's a little annoying since that creation story with Ymir doesn't say anything about where the hell this tree comes from. But it comes from somewhere. But in any case, in both cases, there is life. Fundamentally, the universe is alive. Either as a thing that the gods kill to make new life, or as a tree that is constantly beset upon by various types of life that seem to be trying to take things from it. And then other kinds of life adds things back, right? So in every case, it's not static. It's not, a big empty sphere with some stuff built into it by an architect god. It is a thing that grows, a thing that also decays, a thing that from which life arises, into which life goes, life shelters in it, life eats from it, life also feeds it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complicated, as Ferraro there said, it is an entire ecosystem. It's a thing that it's not just an individual thing. It's a bunch of things all together making something larger, all of which are active, dynamic things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think when you ask where did the tree come from is, well, it came from the opportunity for it to come into being.
Yeah.
Is kind of was what knee-jerk reacted when I heard that, is just that it's being coming forth because there's an opportunity for it to happen. It's a constant, coming into the world because there's a space for it.
Yeah. And we were having a conversation before we switched the mics on about different deities, for instance, having different aspects to them that might seem mutually exclusive at first glance. And the importance is to be able to understand how these things can be the same thing. I think the last session we were talking about the kind of triple image of being throughout the story of the shaping of the universe, as first a void and then a giant and then a tree. Right? And the concept that these are all three representations of the same wholeness, one in potential, one in kind of a rough primary shape, and then the final in kind of the current shape that we have it now.
Sure.
And I think it's worth mentioning all of the connections that we have in mythology and in poetry between men and trees. Because think of the giant as a macranthrope.
That means large man.
Yes. Basically, a man-shaped or a human-shaped giant. You look at the quote from the Voluspa about the first people being created from trees, and you look at all of the different words for man or warrior specifically that are constantly referencing trees that you have in the skaldic poetry. So I think that the leap from tree to man in the general sense, is a much shorter one in the early Germanic understanding of things than it might be for us currently. So yeah, I think in a sense the tree and everything in it is the giant. The giant kind of becomes the tree plus ecosystem.
There's a curious back and forth, right? If you look at the creation sacrifice story from Indo-European mythology as reconstructed by Bruce Lincoln, that says that he can find in various Indo-European mythologies that survive reflections of an original story involving there being an original man, his twin, and a bovine. And there was a sacrifice where the man killed, or the priest man, let's say, whose name usually is something like Manu or something, killed the twin, whose name was something like Yemo. That might sound familiar. And also probably the bovine. And these were the basic sacrifices from which the world was made. And we see it also sort of going the other way around, where the world is said to be, the various parts of the world are said to come together into the first man in various places, including very strange places. Is it the second Emziger Codex, just to make things Frisian around here for a second, that has the story of how God created Adam by bringing together all the same sorts of things that the original sacrifice is said to have taken apart into the world, bringing them back together into a man. So you have man becoming the parts of the universe, a man who sacrificed, the parts of the universe coming together to create man. You have both sides happening in these various stories. Well, we can look then also at what we're looking at here. We have gods creating humans from trees. But then we also have, well, and it's three gods, we also have those same three gods killing the big man, if we don't want to use funny Greek terms, the machanthrope, the giant, and it apparently, although this is not explicitly given anywhere, but we're assuming now becoming a tree. So that we have, again, we have maybe that reversal happening again.
Yeah.
And it involves it's Woden and his brothers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the machanthrope becomes the tree?
That's what we're saying here,
Yeah,
right?
okay,
Ymir becomes Yggdrasil.
Right.
Interesting.
And
Maybe. Now, this is very speculative, right? This is not in the Prose Edda or the Poetic Edda or even the 97th Emsiger Codex or anywhere else, right? There's only 2 of them anyway. But
If I were to go outside at the moment and kill a large man,
Yeah.
and then not even do any further shaping, just leave his body there,
Yeah.
there would be a whole ecosystem of things growing from that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Possibly even a tree, depending on where this.
It might take a while
happening.
for the tree to grow out of that, but yes.
You know,
You're
there are
going to
sorts of
get other
feeding
things
off,
first.
You know, it's,
Yeah.
it's the whole thing. So, you know,
Yeah,
it makes perfect sense to me that you would have that cycle in the cosmology.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It speaks to kind of, the essence of there is no life without death. Like it is an endless cycle of life becoming death and kind of life arising from a space where, almost like death, it's kind of like the womb and tomb kind of thing, like where you're kind of coming out of what one can imagine like a similar space as one goes to in death, the one coming out of when one is born as well.
that's a very good point. And I've often thought, and again, this is speculative. You know, you're going to get that after 30 plus years of heathenry. Thinking about noodling over these texts, that we have this image of, and man, I'm sorry, Garrett, I can't remember what the source of this is, but this image of Frigg spinning the thread that the Norns make souls out of, right?
Mm.
Where is that stuff coming from? Where is she getting it? I've always thought that when people die and go to hell, they kind of decay back into whatever the stuff is that souls are made of, right? These are the people who didn't have whatever quality is required in order to remain themselves after death. So there's a recycling that goes on there too, where the stuff that souls are made of can be recycled into new souls.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of organic matter, like Ferraro was just saying with, like if one of us were to just die and our matter would get repurposed into other forms of life to keep it going. So it's kind of like nothing is lost and everything is constantly renewed.
Precisely what I was thinking, right?
Yeah.
You have this principle in physics that neither matter nor energy are destructible, right?
Yeah.
I think what we're looking at in early Germanic cosmology is something that reflects that in a very deep way. Nothing that is sacrificed is lost. Something that dies doesn't just cease to exist. There's something of that has to keep going.
Right. Let me back up for a sec. So Frigg supplies the thread to the Norns that they weave souls out of. It's fates they weave, right? So I think, not to be overly critical, but I think we should be careful.
Yeah, we can, and
I still think the point stands.
There's the possibility of editing all this out, as well.
Well, forget editing. Let's keep talking, right?
Could it be that that thread is that she is supplying is the soul, and then the Norns are weaving the fate of that soul with it?
I don't know.
Not sure. I'm not familiar with that source, wherever you got that from. I've never heard that.
I'm going to be honest with you. That could have been Dale's Norse Gods and Giants there.
I feel like I saw something like that in like Grimm or something, and it was from somewhere obscure. I don't think that's, but it could be Delaire. I don't know. I read that too, to my kids. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I came unprepared for sources today.
Yeah, well, I think we all did.
Yeah, we
That's
all did.
okay.
We're
Maybe sometimes we need to fly off the handle like this and see what happens, right? Fly off the handle. That's not what I meant. Fly by the seat of our pants. That's better.
The point does remain, though, that nothing is lost, that everything is in a renewal cycle. I mean, it gets back to
what is it that we say every year? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
Alles Leben ist ein Sterben, alles Sterben ist ein Werden.
Yes, for those who don't speak German. Every living is a dying, every dying is a becoming.
Yeah.
And let's think, I mean, I think of the thread of fate coming from the norms as basically norns as being a I'm not going to say illustration, but you know how it is that with mythology, things I think, have concrete existence as well as symbolic, right? Gods exist. Yes, they do. And if you think that's weird, maybe you want to go listen to a different podcast. And they're also symbolic for other things because the universe is weird that way. I think the thread that the Norns weave is a way, is a kind of illustration of, symbol of causality, right? And I think it should be pretty clear that the fact that people are dead, that lives have been finished, is only a part of the stuff that causes what follows. What you do over the course of your life, if it causes anything, if you're not a completely unimportant being,
acausal
is acausal. Yes, if you're not that person, and I don't even know who that person is, unless you're that, stuff lasts past you, right? And so the idea that somehow or another what the Norns are doing is coming from the dead, of course it is, right? I mean, this is the amazing thing about, there are a lot more dead people than living people, I think, right?
Yeah.
And they don't even get a vote, the poor guys. I mean, they're horribly disenfranchised.
Let's here in Chicago.
Well, there is that. Yes. And, I mean, they're not in therapy. I mean, of the millions of people in therapy, none of them are dead. Obviously, they're an underserved population. It's, so yeah, it's very unfortunate. But to get back to being a little serious, though, the point is that a lot of, I would say most of who and what we are is because of things dead people did. And then we get to pick that up and move forward with it.
Right.
Yeah, to one day die and so on, to have to repeat itself, yeah.
So, of course, the thread that is fate, or whatever we're calling it, that is weird, I'll use that word instead because it's less loaded with baggage I don't want.
We're taking it back.
That is weird. That thread will come from the dead. Also, maybe to a lesser degree from the living, but it comes from the dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, it's the Norns that do that. Do the Norns have something to do with the tree, too?
They do. They're the ones who are working daily to renew the tree, not through this act of weaving, but by spreading, I believe in the humankind, white mud or white clay on the branches in order to halt or reverse the process of decay.
So, where's that white clay coming from?
Thergomir.
Which is?
Well, the water that fills the well, isn't it?
Which well? What are we?
There's three of them. But
for the audience, what is this well? What are we talking about?
Earth's well. Well of Weird.
It is a well of Weird. Where is it?
Well, kind of at the foot of the tree in some imaginings. So it's like the water must then flow well underneath the tree and then come up in the Brunner
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a spring
Yeah.
and a well as we think of them now, right?
Right.
Brunner is a wellspring, yeah.
Yeah.
It's water coming up out of the earth.
Right. So it comes up from there.
It's the same word as like born, right? Like Bourne.
Sherburn.
Yeah.
Sherburn.
Yeah.
Clear wellspring.
Okay. Sorry. Go on.
So they take the water that rises up into the well or I guess water and white mud.
Mhm.
And they use that to heal the trunk of the tree.
Mhm.
And then, as we saw in those earlier verses, there's those two animals that are at the top of the tree, and there's a heart, Eikthyr, and then drops from his horns fall into Huergomir, which then, of course, comes back up into the well and is then put on the tree in this never-ending cycle.
So we have the water cycle.
Evapotranspiration.
But here it has meaning, right? It's man, I feel like if I were only a little bit more awake, I could do a deep dive into what does water mean. We have this constant, we've talked about the tree, which is kind of this solid, not static, dynamic, but solid part of this whole thing. And we have a constant transfer of water. Water is always flowing, right? What does the water mean? We have this idea of the well of weird, the Urðarbrunn, being having to do with causality and fate or weird. But why water?
We had discussed last time that it can kind of represent time and the tree being.
Yeah.
So, I mean, water is interesting, right? For it exists throughout living things. Plants that are alive, you cut them open and liquidy stuff comes out, which is at least part water. People, you cut them open, it's
Stuff comes out, which is at least part water.
at least part water. Yes, rather salty, not good to drink unless you're a vampire, but it is. Animals come out of the water originally. This was perhaps not known to our ancestors, but I think we feel it in a way anyway, right? There's something about an ocean with all the stuff that's in it that gives you the feeling of that. Before you are born, how do you know that you're about ready to pop out? Your mother's water breaks, right? Makes a big whoosh and kind of a mess, but it's amniotic fluid, but it's water pretty much.
Salt water.
Yep. Water is everywhere, right? And so it makes sense, right? Just in terms of what happens with plants. If the cosmos is a tree, what's going to flow through that tree? Sap, which is, water with stuff added. What do you need to feed to a tree to make it live? Well, unless you have a really weird sort of tree that eats meat or something, generally it sits in the soil that hopefully has the minerals it needs, and you have to water it. Unless it's a really strange tree.
We were having a conversation yesterday about the importance of wetlands as sacred places in this religion and in a lot of other religions as well. But you have, all of the bog finds that you can, archaeological finds across Europe that were placed there intentionally, right? Bog depositions. What is it? I mean, I feel it. So I feel like I know the answer in a certain sense, but it's hard to put words to it. What is it about water? What is it about watery places that is sacred to us, that makes them sacred to us? I feel like that's an important direction to go, but I don't know how to get much further.
So I think a few things, this is probably moving away from cosmology, but a few things that make bogs, I'm going to use the word liminal, right? you can't like make a house on a bog, right? Well, I guess you could drive stakes down or something, but it's a pain. Bogs are not a really great place to live. You want to live on more solid land, perhaps adjacent to bogs, but you don't want to live in a bog. Bogs are full of strange animals, plants, bugs, whatever, that make them, again, a weird place to live. But at the same time, a place that is very alive. They also have like weird gases in the air, right? Because stuff rots and it gases off. And they are just a very otherworldly, I would say, place. Just in sort of a very naturalistic way, you can say that. And on top of it, it's water.
Yeah.
And yeah, there is something utterly archetypal about water, right? I mean, not to get all Jungian, but the whole thing that of water sort of representing the universal mother or whatever, right? For obvious reasons that we just mentioned, that whoosh a little bit before you were born. Yeah. And the fact that you spent a whole bunch of time before you were born floating around in that amniotic fluid inside of your mom.
Yeah.
Which
I think if you think of, we kind of talked at the top of this episode about all the ways you could see tree-like structures and different things and like all the places water existing, and part of what just makes them awe-inspiring and like larger bodies of water. You have like the concept of rhythm with waves
and tides.
In a river, you have this kind of sense of constant flow that's just kind of mesmerizing. And so like, yeah, water is this just kind of bizarre behaving thing that we kind of just know that we identify with. It describes deeper truths about the universe. And it does seem to have some kind of intrinsic, like the tree, like intrinsic relationship to our very essence and being.
I mean, there can really be no life as we know it without water.
Yeah, we have total dependence on it.
And this brings me back to the mythological image of the waters being created from the blood of human.
Yeah.
If I've lived by the coast before, and there is something about the waves, the ebb and flow that is, and the smell of the salt spray that is mesmerizing. That'll get its hooks into you and not really let go. I think, geared to your point earlier of people who were navigating a great deal up rivers, the entire thing, the bodies of water, the ebb and flow of the tides and the constant flow of the rivers suggests an arterial system. It suggests a heartbeat with the tides and the flow of blood with the rivers.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. I like the male and female of like, I'm kind of thinking like plant matter being like the male and like the female being the water, and in the tree metaphor, and really any carbon life form as we know it is, part matter, you could call it, or, and then water. Yeah. Solid and water.
A bit of solids and liquids, really.
Yeah. I mean, that's carbon life forms in a nutshell. Yeah.
So it's a harmony between the two, solid and liquid.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we see at play with the tree for sure.
Does that mean that people are liminal spaces?
I don't know how you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for sure.
I'm liminal as heck, man.
You're
liminal. I'm just a big bundle of liminal.
You're the most liminal.
When you got something.
I haven't thought of it yet. So
yeah,
we'll keep chatting. Hopefully that won't.
Well, and I mean, and this is maybe a severe digression, but when the waters in you aren't flowing right, it is a real problem.
Oh yeah, when your humors get out of balance.
Well, I mean, or when you've got problems with blood flow.
Sure.
You get
too many solids in your liquid areas, you get blocked arteries.
That's true. Too many, or your veins aren't conveying your blood to the right place, and so it builds up in your feet or something. That sucks.
Yeah.
There are all kinds of things like that, right?
Yeah.
The flow is necessary for you to keep going. So going back a little bit, we were talking about, at least one view of the sort of Christian created universe that made it out to be this very static architectural thing. What's it mean for something to be static if it's alive? That generally means it's dead, right? An animal that no longer has stuff going on is a dead animal.
Mm-hmm.
Natural universe. I keep using that word for it, and I hope nobody is thinking I'm trying to say bad things about architecture. I'm all about the cool buildings. Don't get me wrong. But that universe that's just like static, that is a dead universe. It only lives insofar as someone has stuck some stuff in it, right? God showed up and said, let there be hyenas and whatever the hell else. And we got critters, and they're there until, he decides to get rid of them. The universe we're talking about, the cosmos that we're thinking of as a tree, is not a dead universe. It is a universe that's alive. And as we were saying, it in some ways, at least its origins, pre-existed even the gods of our mythology.
Yeah.
So it is in some ways from every point in time, which is what God is claimed to be, is that he's outside time.
Right.
Yeah. It feels like we're coming up on our own understanding of it based on the title, at least.
Yeah,
These past couple conversations.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. And one of the things that I've been interested in, one of the reasons I really want to get through Being in Time, more than that, to understand the work, is that it seems like from other things I've read of Heidegger that there are touch points, right? There seem to be places in which Heidegger's understanding of being is at root coming from the same wellspring of our of the heathen understanding of being.
Certainly his understanding of time, although he claims to start with Augustinian time, right? Which, of course, Bauschatz tells us is not what dramatic time is like. Yet what he describes is precisely his phenomenological idea of time is precisely weird.
Yeah.
And did you hear the Bergson quote about time recently? That's Heidegger's very close to that, and that was effing weird, right?
Yeah,
I mean that was
it was capital W weird.
Yeah, capital W, small y.
Right.
Yeah.
So the fact, you brought up phenomenology there, and I haven't done any big readings in phenomenology. I mostly know about it from what people have said about it on, either in conversations or on podcasts that I've listened to. But it seems to be, the study of existence as it appears, like as it presents itself to you.
Oh, that's the method that Heidegger was using in Being in Time, right? Because Heidegger's, teacher was Husserl, the guy who invented phenomenology.
So it seems to me that, the similarities there could just come down to the fact that, when we're talking about pre-Christian Germanic heathens, we're talking about a group of people who, through their traditions came up with a really close observation of things like time causality.
Right. I think that's exactly what it is, right? Bergson and Heidegger come up with that because Bergson and Heidegger are both, in maybe different ways, trying to strip away the baggage that has popped up, right? And Heidegger's method is Abbau, right? Which, of course, we know that Derrida made into deconstructionism. But it's the idea of deconstructing. We'll use that word, although we're not talking Derrida, because nobody understands Derrida, especially not Derrida himself. He is disassembling the whole Western tradition. Because, of course, the Western tradition has built up thing after thing after thing after thing that takes us away from our sort of primal experience of time being whatever.
Sure.
This is what Heidegger calls metaphysics. We're moving a long way away from what we're here to discuss, but what the hell, right? Which he takes to be this whole sort of tradition that he says, it's ended. Metaphysics is done. It has worked itself out to a point where it has to be done. Now we got to kind of start over, because it has, in a way, well, not even in a way, it has in fact led to the forgetting of capital B, being.
Sure.
It has led to, instead of talking about being, we've been talking about beings, and we piled all this stuff up on top of what's sort of actually happening in terms of what we experience, and it's something that we have to work through. And so, when Heidegger is talking about time, about this phenomenological way of seeing time, he is talking about what we actually experience in time, right? He supposedly that's what he's doing with his analysis of the being that's closest to us, right? Dasein, our own being, right? All this kind of thing. It's a sort of cutting away of all of this sort of traditional baggage that gets in the way of a primal understanding. I would say, whether we agree with exactly the way that it ended up with Heidegger or not, a good part of being a heathen, or I would say any kind of pagan that's worth the name, is doing exactly that same thing with our understanding of what it is to be human and what it is to be a human who does religious activity and what it is that humans worship, right?
Right.
It is not to accept all of the strange abstractions of the last 2,000 years of theology. It is to strip a lot of those away. And then I think that's important.
Yeah. So what, the question might be asked then, well, if you're trying to strip away all of these accretions, these built up accretions over the last 2,000 years of abstraction, why choose a mythology, right? Why go towards something rather than just abbauen?
So I think the fundamental reason why you choose a mythology, or why one chooses you, or however that actually works, is because for every ancient religion, I would say, and I'm not counting the axial ones here, I'm talking about all the various sort of
Pre-axial.
Yeah, or religions that arise out of people's experience as peoples, right? So I almost want to say tribal religions, but even that's not quite right. All of these religions have stories. Indeed, usually what they have is poetry. You don't find these religions without stories about divine figures. They might be gods, it might be whatever the hell a culture hero is, which I'm kind of thinking is maybe like what we call gods in cultures that we don't want to say have gods, because then we would have to respect them.
Possibly.
Not to sound all, lefty and decolonialist here, but it's colonial crap. So I'll sound like a lefty decolonialist if you want it. So, I think that the human experience of the divine always involves story. So you have to have that. If you take that away, you're not actually going to the roots of things. You're avoiding them.
Thank you for listening to the North Star Podcast. For more information about us, visit axenthof.com. That's AXENTHOF.com. In our next episode, to be published on June 15th, we'll conclude our two-part series on cosmology and the world axis.